Hey everyone, this week we're talking about how to set up the Nikon Z7 to capture multiple exposures for creative photography. So this week I've come out to a local area, it's a woodland area, and I'm going to capture, like I said, some multiple exposures using the Nikon Z7. I've got with me the Nikon 40mm f2 Z lens, and I've also got with me the 28mm 2.8 lens. So I'm travelling quite light today, but it'll be perfectly good to demonstrate how multiple exposure mode works on the Z7. We've also got Otis here with the GoPro, and he's going to be getting some Otis cam. So let's head on, I'm going to get some shots, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what multiple exposures are. So multiple exposures are where you've got more than one image superimposed on top of the other one. If it's two images, it's sometimes called a double exposure as well. And these have been produced since the days of film, where you would get your film camera, you'd take your shot, it would capture an exposure on the film, but some cameras would allow you to not wind the film on and capture another exposure or further exposures, and that would layer on top on the film and create a multi-layered image. And this can look really ghostly or ethereal. It can also capture movement throughout the frame and create some really interesting creative effects. Now, in the times of digital, you can do this in Photoshop, for example, where you get layers and you can overlay those, and you've got even more possibilities because you can change the blend modes of the layers with darkness and lightness and add and subtract and things like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. What I'm talking about specifically today is doing it in camera. So certain cameras allow you to achieve this effect directly within the camera by activating certain modes within the menu system. And I'm going to be telling you how to do that on the Z7 today, a little later on. First I'm going to get some more shots, and then I'll tell you how to set it up through the menu system with the Nikon Z7. So to set up the Nikon Z7 to capture multiple exposures, we need to press the menu button on the back of the camera, come into the menu options, and we need to come to photo shooting menu. That's the one with the little icon of the camera. Come across to the right, and the quickest way to get to the multiple exposure feature is actually to go up and up again, and you'll see it in the middle there. So we click on multiple exposure, and you see we've got a number of options that we can play around with in here. So the top one turns it on or off, but when we click on that, you'll see we've got two options to turn it on. So we've got series or single photo. If you choose single photo, it will only take one multiple exposure and then go back to the usual photography mode. If we click on series, then you'll only be capturing multiple exposures for the whole time that it's turned on. So I'm going to click on series. Underneath that we've got number of shots. So here we can choose the number of shots that are layered up. If you choose 2, it'll be a double exposure, 1 superimposed over the other. If you choose 3, it'll be 3 and 4 and so on. Just go back, then we've got overlay mode. So this is quite important. It determines how the images are layered up and how they're blended together. If you choose add, that will use all the gain from the images. So that'll be most like when you're using a film camera. So you'll be capturing an image and another one on top, and it'll use all of the light and all of the gain from the images, and you might end up with quite a bright image if you've got a number of shots. So you do need to adjust your exposure a little bit if you're going to use that one. Average is probably the most useful. It will work out the optimal number of shots and then average those so that you've got the best quality of light between all of the exposures. And then we've got lighten, which will look at all of the pixels and only use the brightest ones. And we've got darken, which will look at all the pixels and only use the darkest ones. So it's really good to play around with those. Certain ones will definitely give you better results. If we go back, we've got keep all exposures on or off. That just means that if you've got that turned on, it will keep all the individual shots in your multiple exposure. If you've got it off, you'll only get the multiple exposure. I've got that off because I don't want all the separate ones at the moment. And finally, we've got overlay shooting. This is really useful. If you've got that turned on, it'll show you your overlay in the viewfinder or on the back of the screen. So as I point the camera, I take my first shot, and then the second shot will actually show the overlaid second shot on the first one. So that's really useful. So that's all of the different features and how you can set it up. Let's go get some more shots. So I've had a really fun time today capturing these multiple exposures, and it's really cool that the Z7 has got this feature. But if your camera doesn't have this feature, then don't worry, because what I'm going to do now is head home, get some images on the computer, and I'll show you a really simple technique how you can achieve this using post-processing software. So I'll see you back there. So that was really fun. You can see just how easy it is to get those effects in camera. And I've not used this before, this is the first time I've used it. I know those images are not going to win any awards, but they did come out okay, and it was really easy and I had a lot of fun doing it. You can play around with how you create those exposures, so you can move the camera between shots, you can adjust your exposure levels to create a darker or lighter look as you layer those images up, and you can also play around with focus as well. You can see the image behind me of the berries. I got one of the berries in focus and then I got a shot of the background out of focus. And I layered those two together and it creates quite a natural look. Even though it's a double exposure, you can't really tell. It almost looks like a natural shot with the out of focus background. So that's quite nice as well. Most cameras have this feature these days. I know a lot of the Nikons do, the DSLRs and mirrorless, and I know that some Canon cameras, for example, and other brands as well have this. But if for any reason your camera doesn't have this feature, then don't worry, we're going to look at how we can achieve this effect in post-processing using software. So I'm going to hand you over to myself and we'll take a look. Okay, so you can use any kind of image editing software that allows you to manipulate pixels independently on separate layers, such as Photoshop. But I know that not everybody has access to an Adobe subscription, So I'm actually using GIMP for this, and this is available to download and use for free, and it'll perfectly do what we need it to do to create these multiple exposures. So you'll see I've got 3 images down here in the layers palette. This is very much like Photoshop. We can turn these on and off. If I turn off these top layers here, you'll see we've got the first image of Otis, the second one here, and the third one. And also, like Photoshop, we can manipulate the opacity and blend mode of each layer. So if I click on this top layer here, we can come to opacity just at the top. I can just click in here and I could type in there 50 for 50%, or I can hold my left mouse button and drag left to right to manually adjust that. And you see we start to get the second layer coming through then. I can do the same on the second layer, and that starts to reveal the third layer. But the real magic happens when we play around with the blend modes. So if I click on this top layer here, come to mode just above where opacity is, I can drop that down. And this is very much like Photoshop as well. We've got different blend modes in here. So for example, we can click on light and only. This is much like the lighting option in camera that I showed earlier when we were using the Z7. And similarly, we've got darken only, which is like the darken mode. And we've got addition, which is similar to add. But we've also got other modes in here, such as burn, or hard light, vivid light. So there's much more control in here, and it gives much more scope for creating really creative outcomes. So really it's just a case of playing around with the opacity and the blend mode for each layer until you get a result that you're happy with. So whether you're using in-camera methods or post-processing methods to capture your multiple exposures, you can see it's really quick and easy to do, and it's also a lot of fun. So I hope you found this video useful, or you've liked it in any way, and if you have, please just give me a thumbs up down below. You don't have to smash it, just click it, that'll do. And massive thank you for tuning in and watching. If you're a regular viewer, I really do appreciate it, as always. And if you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed and you'd like to do so, you can also just click down there on the big red button, or over here on this picture of me, and that way you'll stay up to date with everything I'm doing each and every week. There's a new video every Sunday morning at 10 AM UK time. So I hope you'll join me next week for the next one, but until then, thanks a lot everyone, and bye for now.